It's been less than a week since the Liberals used their majority power to take control of parliamentary committees, and already they've used that power 4 times to turn off the cameras, preventing MPs from debating in public.
Committee, I'd like to move a motion to move the committee in camera.
I'm going to suspend while we change over to in camera. Meeting is suspended.
With that, I move to have the meeting in camera.
I would like our colleague to explain to us why she wants to go in camera.
I would like to suggest that we move in camera.
We will not be silenced. This is wrong.
MP Deschamps-Thériault has moved the motion that we move to drafting instructions. Those drafting instructions happen in camera.
This was strategically planned so that it looks a little different to Canadians. But what I would like to say to Canadians right now is that this absolutely is, again, we have never gone
MPD
in camera.
There's a point of order, please.
This is debate, and the motion is not debatable.
Now, Government House Leader Stephen McKinnon was asked about these closed-door committees, and McKinnon pinned the blame on Conservatives, but insisted he's committed to transparency.
If everything they do as they march into committee meetings every day is dilatory and seeks to impede or obstruct, well then that is going to provoke a counter reaction because committees have jobs to do. I think the Conservatives in particular might have some thinking to do with respect to how they approach committees in this situation, and I think in fairness the government needs to consider how it may always or virtually always work transparently and in public.
Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer joins me now. Andrew Scheer, it's good to see you, sir. I know you're traveling, so thank you for taking the time. I just wonder what your reaction is to what Minister McKinnon said there, that essentially these decisions to go in camera are in some ways a response to what he describes as the tactics of the Conservatives.
Well, what the government calls dilatory motions, we call getting to the bottom of the use of taxpayers' money. That is a proper function of Parliament. It is literally our job to scrutinize where tax dollars are going. So when Conservatives propose to investigate, the $200 million for the purchase of a gravel pad in Nova Scotia, ostensibly for the space program, we think that's legitimate. The taxpayers should know where their money's going. The Liberal response was to shut off the cameras, kick out the public and the media, and stop transcribing what happened. We're not talking about studies or investigations that in any way block legislation. The committees that the Liberals have done this to, where they've shut down the public access to what's going on at committee, are not currently dealing with legislation. It's not like we're trying to get off of dealing with government legislation to do these kinds of things. And again, if the Liberals believe they're on high ground, why go in camera? Why shut off the cameras? Why keep this all secret? If they believe that they should vote down Conservative motions, let them state their case and vote publicly. That is the essence of our democracy, is that when members of Parliament vote and debate and discuss things, they do it for all to see, because they should be trying to convince the Canadian public of that they're right to do what they're doing. And the fact that Liberals won't do this tells you all you need to know.
Well, I know the House leaders talk about the management of parliamentary affairs with some frequency. Have you had any conversations with Mr. McKinnon or any of his staff or any of his proxies about why this is happening and whether this is going to be a continuing feature now that they have a majority in the House and a majority on committees?
No, this came out of left field. Unless you take a step back and you follow the story all along. So you've got a prime minister who the Canadian people deprived of a majority government. The Canadian people wanted a minority government with a strong opposition. That seems to have bothered Mr. Carney, so he's put together his majority. As soon as he got a majority control in the House, he used his power to stack the deck on committees. And then immediately after, they started doing this. So to me, this looks like it was part of the plan all along. We were raising these concerns when we were debating this motion to stack committees. And one of the things we pointed out was saying, the Liberals are going to now be able to shut down, especially on these oversight committees, proper investigation as to the use of taxpayers' money and ethical scandals. That is precisely what has happened. The ink wasn't dry on that order before Liberals started to shut down these committees. For example, there's one committee where the Liberals were filibustering right up until the vote in the House of Commons was finished. The 2 extra Liberal MPs got added. and they shut it down.
Right.
So to me, this was something that they had in the works, and so it's not surprising they didn't give us a heads up because it was part of their plan all along.
But since it's happened, I just wonder if there have been conversations if this is going to be a continual tactic that they intend to use. Because, and this is not a defense of what happened, because I don't know what was discussed, obviously, when it went in camera. Committees do have legitimate reasons to go in camera from time to time. It is uncommon, but it's not an unusual thing to see in Parliament. But this is happening with a frequency right after the majority, as you say. So do you know if they intend to keep doing this? Because I've even spoken to some Liberals who are like, this doesn't look good, and we should probably stop this. I don't know what they're going to do, though.
Well, I believe it's telling that they did this in the first place. This shows who they are in their DNA. They are allergic to accountability and transparency. This has been on display since they formed government in 2015, both majority and minorities. Think about all the things they voted against in the last election. Conservatives were trying to get to in the last parliament, sorry. Conservatives were trying to get to the bottom of the Arrive scam scandal, the Green Slush Fund. Liberals voted against investigating that. So this is part of a pattern. The fact that this was their knee-jerk reflexive action the second they got their majority was to make life easier for themselves instead of making life more affordable for Canadians. That's what we wish they would focus on, not blocking investigations into wasteful spending, but actually coming up with ideas to lower grocery prices, lower food prices. They're not interested in that. So if this continues, it'll reinforce it. If there's any kind of modification, we're certainly going to do everything we can to shine a light on this and help put that public pressure on them to abandon that. But I think it's very telling for Canadians, and every one of your viewers should consider this, that this was their instinct. They show you who they are by what they do. And the second they started shutting down these investigations, turning off the cameras, going behind closed doors because they're afraid of the facts coming to light for Canadians.
Look, obviously, there's no way for me to know what was discussed in those meetings unless someone, breaks the secrecy of going in camera. Do you have any way of knowing, as House Leader, whether or not there were legitimate reasons in any of these cases to go in camera? Because, as I said, sometimes there are, but 4 in a week so quickly after the structure change is an interesting coincidence, shall we say, to be charitable. Do you know if some of these were necessary?
I don't believe any of them are necessary. And, to your point about sometimes they do go on camera, sometimes legitimately you want to have a conversation about planning out a committee's work schedule. And you don't want, you might want to do that cordially in a non-political way. Those are rare in general, and they usually have to do with just the scheduling of committee business. And then all the rest that flows from that, the actual hearing from witnesses, the debate on substantive motions, all of that happens in public. This is new. This is where we've put forward a substantive motion to get to the bottom of spending, to find out what ethical safeguards there are with the Prime Minister and his investments and now government policy, getting government into bed with so many different types of businesses. These are legitimate substantive motions that if the Liberals disagree, if they don't think Canadians deserve to know where their tax dollars going, they can make that case publicly. This is not one of those examples that fall under the normal use of going in camera. This is something that the Liberals are starting to do specifically so that they can shut down these motions, vote against these motions, block these studies from happening without the public attention. And that's the part that's so galling.
Look, we reached out to the Liberals to come on and tell their side of the story through the House leadership and various others, and we were told no one was available. So the airtime will be there for them should they want to explain this. But, Mr. Scheer, I watch a lot of committees, probably more than is healthy for a normal person. And like this is a different kind of thing, but often they become cartoonishly partisan at times. I think even some of the members might agree that it's sort of, there's a grandstanding for social media clips. I mean, just in general, do you think committees work well right now and have been working well right now? I'm not assigning blame to any particular side of this because it's kind of a pox on everybody at times, right? Do you think the parliamentary committees are functioning as they should?
Well, I believe they were functioning up until the government changed the numbers on the deck. This is what Canadians voted for. Canadians voted for a parliament where the government was going to have to work with opposition parties to implement its agenda and to get legislation passed. I should point out that all the examples I've used about the Liberals turning off the cameras, going behind closed doors, and killing these studies are not are not happening at committees where government legislation is moving its way through. So the argument that the House leader, the government House leader had about this was obstructing the government's agenda is just completely false. This is a normal part of the committee process. And look, members of parliament are going to tell the story in the ways that they can to highlight attention to the work of committees. It's up to each individual Canadian to judge the effectiveness of their members of parliament, either at committee or in the House. But Canadians can't make that judgment if the Liberals turn off the television cameras, stop the transcribers, kick the public and the media out of those committee rooms. And that's the part that we're objecting to. If they want to make the case for why a committee shouldn't get to the bottom of $200 million for a gravel lot in Nova Scotia, let them make that case. And if Canadians agree with them, then they'll be rewarded. If they disagree with them, then they'll face the consequences, as they should in a democracy. What they shouldn't be doing is shutting down the accountability and the transparency so that Canadians can actually see what's going on.
Well, Steve McKinnon did say today that in fairness, he thinks the government needs to consider how it may always work transparently and in public. So we'll see if this practice continues or whether it ends after the week that we've just seen. Andrew Scheer, I know you got a flight to catch. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks very much, David. Thanks for having me on the show.